Say you guys are sports nutrition industry professionals, you're sitting around the water cooler, maybe you're grabbing a few beers, and one of your fellow friends, fellow colleagues asks you if you had one event-based prediction, outlandish prediction for the sports nutrition industry, what would that be this year? And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that on video for you guys. I'm going to guess my top 5 outlandish event-based sports nutrition industry predictions this year. And if this sounds vaguely familiar from last year, I did do a similar video where I listed my top 5 outlandish event-based sports nutrition industry predictions of 2019. I'm going to recap those first before I give you guys my guesses for 2020, but I first kind of have to give you guys a disclaimer. I don't have any insider information. Please do not act on any of this information. This is purely for entertainment purposes. This is for you guys to see some of my logic behind how I think about some of these event-based outlandish things, predictions. It also just gives you guys one more chance to make fun of me when we go over a recap of these next year. So let's kind of see how I did last year. Let's see if I was good enough to at least get one of my guesses right. The first one that I brought up was that I thought Bang Energy would be purchased in some percentage, maybe not wholly owned, but in some percentage by AB InBev. So my logic behind this one was that AB InBev was looking for some non-alcoholic assets for their portfolio. A lot of their kind of beer brands, legacy beer brands, are struggling currently in the market conditions. So they have been looking at some investments in high growth, mature categories. And I thought traditional energy drinks would be great, especially because it would pair with their highball investment that they made, which is more of a natural energy drink. And I also thought that the $1 billion plus check that would be thrown at Jack Oak, the CEO of Bang Energy, would be enough for him to say, hey, man, I built something really cool, a beverage arm of my VPX sports nutrition brand. This would be enough for me to ride off in the South Florida sunset in my beautiful new house with my beautiful family and take some money off the table and enjoy the fruits of his labor. How did I do, guys, on that one? Obviously, Jack did not sell to AB InBev or anybody else for that matter. My prediction kind of was twofold why it was wrong. One, I overestimated the aggressiveness for AB InBev and their acquisition arm for their non-alcoholic beverages. I think they had some turnover in terms of their talent at the top level. I think that kind of slowed them down. And I also underestimated Jack's ability to say no to several multi-billion-dollar offers from large CPG portfolios. Now, do I think that these offers for Bang Energy are going to continue in 2020 and they're going to become more enticing? Definitely. Do I think Jack is ready to sell in 2020? Probably not. So my thought is 2020 is definitely going to be still the Bang Energy effect, and it's going to be independently owned still. I think maybe this could still happen in 2020. I'm not exactly sure. Second one I had on my list from last year was that Liberty Media would sell bodybuilding.com. And my logic was that Liberty Media had held the asset for a while. It was now kind of a losing investment for them. They were not really making any more money. They didn't really want to dump more money into it to turn it around, and they needed to get rid of it. How did I do on this one? Liberty Media did, in fact, sell bodybuilding.com. They sold it to Expedia Group. It was part of a more complex asset sell that gave Expedia Group all of the Expedia and all of the other kind of websites underneath of it back to Barry Diller. I don't necessarily think that Barry Diller wanted the bodybuilding.com name, and honestly, they're going to keep it long term. I don't think so. So this is still probably a continuing story. This is probably something that is going to have some more chapters in the future. The third one from last year that I kind of guessed my outlandish sports nutrition event predictions from last year, I said that Glanbia would purchase EAS from Abbott Laboratories. My logic was that Abbott Laboratories basically just up and closed EAS. EAS still had about $60 million in sales that year, I believe, somewhere give or take a little bit. And they just closed it. They didn't sell it. They didn't put it up for sale pretty much from what I could see. And I thought that this would be a perfect acquisition target for Glanbia that does really good at kind of extracting more value out of a legacy brand. How did I do on this one, guys? I did not get this one right. Abbott Labs has been consistent that they are not going to sell the EAS name. I think the tax credit is worth more to them than they would like to get out of the asset. Nobody's willing to pay the premium price that Abbott Labs is looking to get out of the name. And Glanbia's kind of had their own issues over last year. I think they do have some confidence with the SlimFast acquisition that they made, so they might be still looking for other names, but I think at this point, this one is probably not going to happen. I also saw that Abbott Labs has really kind of taken and stripped away a lot of the product and even some of the color, the purple color, away from EAS and put it into the Ensure Max Protein product extension. So I think this one is going to live on in spirit, but I don't think this transaction is going to happen. The fourth one that I had on my list was that GNC and Vitamin Shoppe were going to announce more store closures than they had done in 2018. My logic was that GNC did announce that they were doing some store closures in 2018. I didn't think it was enough. I thought there was still a lot more fat they had to cut off the meat. And also through some of the conference calls of the Vitamin Shoppe, I saw them talking about store optimization plans and things of that nature. So it was just my logic that this was not the only announcements we were going to see with store closures with both GNC and Vitamin Shoppe. How did I do on this one? Got this one right as well. Both the Vitamin Shoppe and GNC announced major store closures over the next couple of years. They're already starting to move pretty aggressively with that one. But again, I don't know if this story is even done yet. I would not be surprised if we see more store closures being announced or some revision of store closures being announced sometime this year. And the last prediction I had for last year was that I believed that MusclePharm would be purchased by a private equity firm and it would be taken off the public markets. My logic was that MusclePharm has been going through a multi-year transformation, turnaround phase, and public markets is not the place that you want that to be happening. So I thought private equity would come scoop it up as long as they could get a pretty good deal in restructuring some of the debt, and they would take this private. How did I do in this one? That did not happen. I think that because of some legal kind of troubles plus some accounting woes right now at MusclePharm, I think a lot of the private equity firms got scared away. They weren't really interested in it probably at the price point, even though I've heard the price point is pretty low on MusclePharm. But we will see if 2020 changes that. So if we recap the scorecard from last year, I got 2 out of 5, which actually is not that bad. I actually thought if I got 1 right out of those 5, I was doing pretty good because these outlandish predictions, event-based sports nutrition predictions, these are not something that I'm trying to just get small wins. I'm trying to really guess some unique things. So 2 out of 5 I think is pretty good. But while looking back was fun and I enjoyed trying to see how I did, I think that guessing 2020's will be even more fun. So let's break down the top 5 outlandish event-based sports nutrition industry predictions that I have. First one is I'm going to be going back to GNC here, and I think that GNC will be taken private this year, more than likely by Harbin Pharmaceutical. So I noted earlier that I don't believe that turnaround phases, transformational phases of companies should be done in public markets. Public markets are for growing businesses. So if you are struggling, and GNC has been struggling for a lot of years at this point to try to catch that falling knife of their top line revenue, I think that it's not the place for them. And I think that their largest shareholder, Harbin Pharmaceutical, will come in, clean up the debt structure, and give GNC a chance to make changes that they need in private. I just don't think that GNC has much for assets left to sell off. I mean, they've already kind of sold off their international China business to Harbin Pharmaceutical. They sold their manufacturing operations to International Vitamin Corporation. They really don't have much left unless they're going to go out and sell their private label business or something like that, like something crazy like Sears did. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think they'd be better off just being taken private, and I think that's going to happen in 2020. Second prediction that I have for 2020 is going to be that Nutrabolt, owner of Cellucor and Scivation, I think they're going to continue to go heavy on beverage, and I think they're going to be acquired sometime at the end of 2020. And I'd be looking at either PepsiCo or maybe somebody else, but I'm going to lean towards PepsiCo and give you guys a little bit of logic about why I think that. So Nutrabolt selling hundreds of millions of dollars of ready-to-mix energy products. That's cool. I think they love that. That's impressive. They're definitely the market leader, and they definitely have built an extremely impressive business. Selling ready-to-mix powder does not get you to the multiples that beverage does, high-growth beverage companies do. And I think that they've been over-investing in beverages over the last year, probably 18 months, and they're going really deep in some big markets to kind of show some of these beverage portfolio companies that they have a great product, they have a great brand, they can get some sales velocity, they have a good team, they have good strategies. They're trying to show that they are a investable company, that they should be somebody that gets acquired. And I think that you're in kind of this weird environment because Bang Energy has such a big effect on the energy drink market as a whole. PepsiCo and Coca-Cola are both really trying to get into the energy drink market, more on the wholly owned side of things. They're going to be launching their own Pepsi Cafe and Coke Energy. I think also Coke has a coffee energy drink as well that they might be launching in the US this year. Regardless of those, they're also going to be looking for some assets out there. What can they buy to combat the growth of Bang Energy? I don't necessarily think Bang Energy is up for sale, even though I talked about it earlier. So then they're going to be defaulting to maybe Rockstar is up for sale. You never know. It could be something that could be up for sale. But if neither one of those are for sale, the best option out there for them is Nutrabolt. And I think that because PepsiCo doesn't really have much for any real energy drink players in their portfolio, I think they make sense. I also think because they're so focused in on better for you and reinventing their portfolio from some of their legacy names, I think it makes sense. I also think it'd be super unique for them to have a combination of Cytosport, Gatorade, and Nutrabolt in their portfolio. I am like mind blown over the kind of combinations that could be made with that one. So that's kind of my logic about why I believe that Nutrabolt will be acquired sometime at the end of the year by, I believe, PepsiCo. Third one on the list, the outlandish prediction, event-based sports nutrition prediction list that I'm kind of creating right now, is that I believe Redcon 1 will be named in the top 5 of the Inc. 500 list this year of the fastest growing private companies in the United States. So if my calculations are correct, I believe this is the first year, this next coming year will be the first year that Redcon 1 and Ghost, if they really wanted to, but Redcon 1 for sure. I know Aaron has a history of being on the list, so I think he's definitely going to be putting his name in the hat for this. I think this is the first year that they can be officially on the list because you have to have kind of 3 years of sales data. And while there's probably going to be many hyper-growth companies, being that the economy is great and there's a ton of just unique kind of businesses and industries and verticals, but I believe the estimated 40,000% 3-year growth rate that Redcon 1 will put up on the Inc. 500 list, I think that'll be enough for them to be in the top 5. Honestly, could make them the number 1. I didn't want to negate me getting this one right if they weren't number 1, so I did the conservative horse race betting thing, and I just went for the top 5. The fourth outlandish sports nutrition event prediction of the year of 2020 is that I believe the kind of the mergers and acquisitions targets will change away from protein bars, which seemed to be what happened last year, to some of the more fragmented areas. And I believe this is going to be keto, beauty supplements, and plant-based. I think that the sports nutrition brands that are mostly kind of focused on those areas, I think those are going to be what gets acquired this year. So my logic here on this is that you're going to be continuously getting more acquisitions that are going to happen in the sports nutrition, active nutrition market. The idea of what sports nutrition brands are from a categorical silo is completely changed. It's completely different from where it was 5 or 7 years ago. And there's a lot of these brands that are getting some funding from private equity or venture funds. And because of that, they're getting to the point where I think these investors are going to want to cash out. So I think you're going to see a lot of these kind of more niche, smaller brands. And I'm using this as kind of a small targets for these large, big strategics to buy them, but they're not necessarily small from a revenue perspective if we're counting all sports nutrition brands. I think these are going to be ones that are in the $50 to $100 million range in revenue, but I think you're going to be seeing a bunch of names start to get acquired sometime in 2020. And I think the acquirers are going to be interesting. I don't think they're always going to be CPG strategics. I think you might see some private equity firms go out and buy them. But I also think you might see some other strategics start to build these different kind of conglomerate flywheel type of companies. I think you might see somebody like a Lululemon come in and start to buy a company if it makes sense for them. They could definitely come in and maybe do something like that. That's getting a little bit wild, but I think it's a possibility. But just to give you guys a few names just to have some fun, I don't know if any of these are up for sale or if these are even considerations out there right now, but names like Ancient Nutrition, Vital Proteins, Perfect Keto, Hum Nutrition, Moon Juice, and Bulletproof. I think all those names have some potential to get moved over 2020. In the last kind of outlandish prediction that I'm going to have for 2020 in the sports nutrition industry is that I believe that a major regulatory action by the FDA will rock the sports nutrition industry over the next year. Firstly, if you guys have not watched a ton of my videos before, I am not for more regulation. I am the complete opposite of that. I do not like the idea of more regulation. I do like the idea of them enforcing what is on the books more to see and then assessing, but we're not at a point where you just add more regulations to the book. And before you guys kind of pick apart what is going to be this major regulatory announcement, is it going to be something that is maybe some Health Canada-like approach? I'm not exactly sure. Will it come in some aspect of maybe a stricter NDI process? Again, not exactly sure. What I do know is that the last considerable regulation, the Schall of 1994, was 25 plus years ago. And if you know anything about the sports nutrition industry, it has changed immensely in 25 years. I mean, it's immensely changed over the last maybe year or two. So if you think that something from the books in 1994 is still effective today, it's not. I don't necessarily think that tinkering with the regulation is something that we shouldn't as an industry do. But I think that first move is to enforce what's on the books to see how things kind of progress and then maybe add. But I think something definitely happens in part because I think 8 out of 10 Americans at this point adult Americans take some nutritional supplements. So there is an interest, public interest from the government to make some action. There is some need maybe from consumer safety or perceived need for more consumer safety. I think regardless, something happens. I know there's been a lot of chatter over the last year about what could happen, and I just feel like it might be the year that something gets put up for vote that gets enough of initial interest that gets moved, and the industry is going to have to adapt and evolve to that new set of regulations. And to throw you guys one bonus one, I kind of just hinted you guys on this one when I was recapping last year. I think this year, MusclePharm does go private. A private equity firm takes them off the public market and they go private. I think that they get some of their accounting woes taken care of with the SEC. I think the legal issues will be kind of put behind them or put in a place that is a little bit more comfortable for somebody to come in and purchase them. So I think bonus points maybe. I think this is going to happen in 2020, but maybe I'm wrong again, and maybe I'll be putting that on the list next year again. Do you have outlandish predictions for the sports nutrition industry, an event-based prediction? Love to hear about them. Would love for you guys to comment down below on this video or any of the posts in which I share this video on some of my social media accounts. All those are down below as well. Would love to have you guys follow me along on those social channels. Engage with me. Let's get to know each other a little bit better in 2020.